So you now are in school.
Right, I'm now in school. I'm finishing up my third year of law school. I didn't take the bar exam in July because I still had a couple of courses that I had to finish that summer. Obviously, because I had Jason, I didn't do a summer associate program, so I hadn't lined up a job. So I was completely out of the loop when it came to thinking of a job. And that summer, I went to the Catholic University placement office, and they had a notice on the office saying that a law firm by the name of Wilkes Artis, Hedrick and Lane, hadn't hired enough associates, and they had a need for an associate in either the zoning or the finance transactional group. And so I really didn't know much about zoning, except that I was an urban studies major in college, so I've always been interested in cities and development. And I had decided once Jason was born that I didn't want to do antitrust litigation for a large firm that I had clerked out because the hours were too crazy. And this was a smaller firm, pretty much 9 to 6, 5 days a week, no weekend work. It sounded perfect for somebody with a family. And I went for the interview, and I got hired. And it was interesting because the senior partner of the firm asked a question which you can no longer ask today. He had a daughter about my age, and he said, you know, I know my daughter is struggling with this same issue. How are you going to manage working with a 15-month-old at home? And I said, I will manage just fine. I've got, you know, the housekeeper all set up. You know, everything's going to be just great. Well, 3 months after I started working at the firm, I found out that I was pregnant. And needless to say, when I went to speak with the executive committee and told them, this same senior partner said, well, I'm just shocked. And I said, well, I am too. It wasn't planned. But, you know, these things happen, and let's see if we can work around this. And what was interesting, this was like January of 1979, I guess. And I was taking time off to study for the bar exam, which was in February of '79. So I asked them, I said, I don't think I can come back full-time with two children that young. And I knew that I had a friend at the Department of Justice, and they had instituted a part-time program. And I knew that Arnold & Porter also had a part-time program. So I asked the firm to consider it. And to their credit, while I was off studying for the bar exam, they looked into it, and when I came back, they said, we're going to do it on a trial basis and see if it works.
So this is a really new emerging concept.
It was.
If you remember back in those days, it's the first time we kind of started about job sharing, like women would share one job. I mean, it was beginning to emerge, this new concept. We have women, they're working, they're educated, what do we do with them? And that is, I think a lot goes to their credit to be able to do that, especially a very established business like the business of law.
Right. And I think within the firm, the people that were in the group that I worked in were more amenable to the idea. Some of the other practice group leaders were not so crazy about it. And the other thing that happened during that time period when I was studying for the bar exam, my father died suddenly of a heart attack. And that had a huge impact on me because I've been very close to my dad. And when I married my first husband, my dad told me that that was the best decision I ever made. Even though it was a pretty rough marriage. And I think when that happened, it kind of freed me up to think about, well, what do I really want to do as a person without worrying about how this is going to impact Dad's view of me. So Jonathan was born in July of 1979, and the firm was very generous. They gave me 3 months off. But back then, you didn't have 3 months with pay. You just had time off to have the baby. And then I came back, and I worked part-time 3 days a week, which worked out great. I would bring the boys in, of course, on the other 2 days to drop off work or pick up work, so everybody in the firm knew my boys. And you, as I told one of my other partners, Allison, when she was contemplating part-time, you work part-time, which means you work full-time and you get paid part-time. So you have to think about that.
That really is true. I mean, has anybody ever done that or teleworked? You really pump out, I think, a lot more work, and companies are beginning to, I hopefully, recognize the benefit of doing that.
I mean, what it really meant is you started telecommuting at that point in time. I did, because I would do a lot of my work at home and then just bring it in for the secretary to type and dictate things at home. So it was the start of telecommuting for me, although it was not telecommuting as we know it today. But that worked out fine for a while, and then and of course, at the same time that I'm working 3 days a week, I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday. My sons were in a Mother's Day Out program, which was a co-op. So once every 2 weeks, you had to help out if you had a child there, and if you had two children there, you had to do it once a week. So, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays I worked at the office. Thursdays I volunteered at the Mother's Day Out program. And you all know those are the kinds of crazy things that we do.
I wonder how men manage the world. If they, you know, can you imagine men co-opting that one day a week? They have to take care of a bunch of other people's kids.
There was never a discussion in the household as to whether I would do that or David. The assumption was, you know, you're the mother, you're going to do that. And still at this point in time, you know, David was working 24/7 at the State Department, and it got to a point where I just decided that the marriage wasn't the right place for me. So we ended up separating when, I guess, Jason was a little over 3 and Jonathan was like a year and a half. And I was still working 3 days a week, but I needed more money, so I gradually increased to 4 days a week and then 5 days a week. We had joint custody, so I had time when the children weren't with me, and those are the times I could really focus on work and get caught up. But it was an interesting time, and yet what I was also doing, and this is one of the things that I wanted to mention, the firm that I worked for was very, very good at emphasizing community service and involvement in the business community and the larger community. And when I started there, one of the things the partners said to me was that we not only want you to join an organization, but we want you to assume a leadership position in the organization. We want you to ask questions and to chair committees and to stand out. Because he said it's very easy for someone to say, oh, I'm doing business development or community work because I'm a member of, you know, the American Bar Association, and that means you go to their annual meetings or committee meetings. We don't want that. We want you to go to meetings, raise your hands, ask a question. And I followed that, you know, completely, and it was nerve-wracking at first because you feel very junior. And I remember sitting on a task force that Marion Barry had created during his first term, when he was the good Marion Barry, and it was to look at drafting the comprehensive plan. And I'm sitting, and I took the partner's place on this committee. So I'm like a second-year associate, you know, sitting on this committee. All these other people are established practitioners, and I'm there thinking, I got to raise my hand and ask a question because that's what he said to do. And you do it, you know, even though you're uncomfortable. You just had to work through it and do it. And eventually, I became known, and then people would, you know. I also found that if you want to serve on a committee, you just need to volunteer. They're always looking for people to do the work. So I would volunteer for committees, and then I would get to chair committees. And that was the way to establish my connections, not only within the business community and for client development, but also the larger community. And I served on boards like Family Place and the YMCA and other organizations. And that fulfilled my sense of you know, social purpose and community.
I want to stop. We always have these moments, these insightful moments, and I want you to hear what Maureen just said. Early on in her career, somebody gave her great advice. He said, we don't want you just to plug in or just go, and we don't want you just to show up. We want you to plug in. We want you to raise your hand. We want you to volunteer as part of your role here. And it's paid off hugely for you in your career.
Absolutely.
So many times people come up and say, you know, I don't know who to belong to or what organization I should join, and I don't get anything out of it. But it's what do you put in it? Mm-hmm. And it's what you put back into what you're doing. It provides so much more. And from this, it's led to your further development in your career,
absolutely,
the direction you've taken, and the effect. You've actually affected the community in many positive ways. So it's a really important thing to think about as you're making decisions where you want to be involved in your career and make a difference.
And then I would also bring my sons along. So when we had a fundraising event, like for the Family Place, they would come and help me set up. And when they needed additional toys for one of their centers for the children, I had Jason and Jonathan go through their toys and figure out which ones they could part with and go and give it. So I think I've instilled in them, you know, the same kind of, you know, sort of giving back to the community, which is important as well.
So how long did you stay at the law firm where you were?
I stayed at that firm until August of 2000. And what happened?
So that was a pretty long time.
22 years, the same firm.
Interesting.
I'm into security here. I'm Taurus. I like security. And there was a group of us that worked together. Allison was part of that team, and Phil and John. And we felt that the firm was going in a different direction than it needed to go, and that our views were going. And we worked well as a team. So we got together and decided And this is an interesting thing because the firm up until then had basically told us you should be grateful that you have a job with us because nobody really wants zoning lawyers. You're just dirt lawyers. There's no value for you
there's some truth
out
in
the
that,
marketplace.
really.
I know.
Irony, zoning is dirt.
So we didn't have a very high opinion of what our worth was. But we got together, put together our business plan, went and talked to a headhunter. And the headhunter said, let me do a few inquiries, and then I'll let you know. And the next day, the headhunter called and said, there are 20 firms that want you. And we were like, what? They want us? They really want us? It was amazing. And so we went through this period of interviewing with the different firms, and we were looking for one that had the same cultural fit that we had, basically a team approach, a collegial approach. And we found it at Shaw Pittman, which is what this firm was then, in August of 2000. So we came over and joined the real estate group here. And we immediately set about trying to meet everybody in the firm and cross-sell and get business and show the firm that they were right in taking a chance on us.
Do you hear this? She has strategy along the way. So I'm going to look for a new job, and I've got a business plan for my job. I like that. And you had a team.
Well, that's the other thing, because I think it's very hard to go out on your own, especially when you work one place for 22 years. So it was really nice to have a team of people, because I felt wherever I went, if it didn't work out or if I didn't like the people, I at least had the 3 or 4 people I was bringing with me to commiserate with. And we actually ended up bringing 10 people when you add in the associates and the legal assistants. So, and I think when we look at hires here at this firm, we have also found that they're more successful in terms of integration when you bring a team of people than if you just bring a solo person. It just works better.